Of course, it's glad to know you're still with us right here on the morning edition at Real Broadcasting Network. And we now turn our attention to other matters now. For decades, students' unionism has been regarded as a training ground for leadership in Nigeria. Many of the country's political leaders, activists, and public figures began their journey in students' movements. We've seen them over time, where they learn the values of advocacy, accountability, and civic engagement. But in recent years, student politics has increasingly come under public scrutiny. Allegations of corruption, violence, external political influence, and financial misconduct have raised questions about whether student unions are still serving the interest of students or becoming platforms for personal ambition and political patronage.
Very, very important thing to consider right there. And the conversations actually go beyond any one institution. Across the country, concerns have been raised about the leadership disputes within students' unions. There's also allegations of vote buying during campus elections. There's the influence of politicians and even external sponsors. And there are the growing questions about transparency in the management of student funds.
And to help us understand all of these issues that have been raised over time and even most recently, we're joined by Comrade Michael Ibanga. He's the former public relations officer, NANS Zone B. Comrade Michael, thank you for joining us this morning.
All right, thank you for having me. You see, like the issue of corruption in institutions, okay, it's not a new thing for me. It's just like having a pastor who is already corrupt on the pulpit, so he's going to bring his corrupt practices to the pulpit.
I like that you got the ground running, or you hit the ground running. I love the energy already. I was going to ask if that was a TV sound. You could just turn it down a bit. You're quite in a noisy area.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, because I'm outside already. Is it better now?
Yeah, it's better. But let's keep up with the energy right now. Let's understand what is going on with the students' union. Should I say unionism right now? We've seen advocates come out from student union. We've seen strong comrades, keep up the mantle. But right now, we've had so many cases of extortion. We've had so many cases of mismanagement of funds, political interference. In your view right now, Mr. Michael, has the student unionism lost its original purpose, or are we still in line?
Well, I wouldn't agree that the unionism has lost its soul, okay? Because if anything happens in an organization, okay, it starts with individuals occupying the offices. The student unionism has its primary purpose, which is the welfareism of the students. And so if anybody goes beyond that, it simply means that the person himself has lost the essence of even being a leader of that organization. So for unionism will continue to be what it was meant to be, what it was created for. Okay, so if there's any corruption in any institution, it is not about the institution, it's about the individuals occupying those offices. Like what we see happening in other schools. That's a clear indication that people are still available to speak up, that people are still available to say no to corruption and what is not necessary in every organization. And so that is why people are not keeping quiet. That is why you see people coming to speak up against all these things. It's a clear hope for the upcoming generation that even the people that are speaking for it are ready to make sure they set a good record for the next generation.
So are you saying it's a case of the individual in office and not the office itself?
Yes, it is the individuals and not the offices, because like I would always say that we have people we can always point back to, okay, who had already occupied these offices, who did very well, that till tomorrow we can always hold them in a high esteem. There are people who have sterling records of representation that even in the next decade, people will still say yes, that they did well.
There are problems being highlighted as to say there are external powers who have now infiltrated student union. other than what is supposed to be set up for the students, there are other powers who now try to dictate what the student union should do. Do you agree to these claims? And why are we
Well,
even
I
having
can't
this
really
conversation in the
ascertain.
first place of external powers?
Well, I can't really ascertain to such claims, you see, because for me, in my time, I was public relations officer of NANS 2017-2018 academic session. In my time, there has never been any interference from any external body or whatever. But I cannot really hold brief, for those who are currently holding offices at the micro level, like student union government. But for NANS, NANS still remains indefatigable, very strong and formidable to speak for Nigerian students at all levels.
But over time, cases have risen that regards to students. And sometimes it takes the outcry of students to get the attention of NAS to even look at these issues. Sometimes we see that these individuals parade themselves as top guys. I'm in a political position rather than I'm in a position to speak for the students of Nigeria. Why is that playing out? Because before now, if we look down memory lane, that wasn't the case. Now we have even students, union presidents and all that having convoys and bodyguards moving around. That wasn't the case in the first place. Is that the reason we have that office?
Well, you see, in Nigeria today, you have a
You
whole lot
were
of
there
things
before.
happening.
No, you were there before.
Olodo uprising. Yeah, Olodo, in my time, there was nothing like Olodo uprising, but today you have Olodo uprising, where somebody will be pretending to go to school, but behind the scene, doing some other funny things to make money from sort of some, unprinted, avenues. Are you getting it? And so these are the same people who will go behind the SUG and try to make it look as if it's one very big thing. And so by so doing, they may, be influenced by maybe money or something, and they would go astray. In my time, there was never anything of such. We were very focused. We were very committed to the welfareism of Nigerian students. So, but it's about the time we are in presently. It's okay. So I don't want to mention things, I may not be able to defend, but understand the terms, a little uprising. That is where we have found ourselves today, where you find people with, questionable, source of incomes and all of, and they pretend to be students. So when you find those kind of people, around, they would want to either influence one or two things, within the student union government. Sometimes maybe to
How
get
did we get
protection of
such people
something.
in power in the first place? If we knew
No,
that
no.
before they came into power, their activities are questionable. So how did they get them in office?
You see, for me, I stay in a Idom state. I stay in a Idom state, and it might be very difficult to go to River State to find out what is happening in River State. Sometimes in UST or Uniport or Amadi Elementary Polytechnic or whatever. You understand? So I will only focus my energy and attention on what is happening within the campuses within a Idom state. Are you getting it? So it is the duty of others who are also in other states to now look into the matters, surrounding, their state institutions. You understand? Not as if we are limited. You get the point. So I can only speak for Akwa Ibom State locally at the institution levels. So, but for Rivers State, they have zonal officers who are from Rivers State. There are joint campus council, that is constituted to handle River State issues. And also a national office holder who oversees the issues in River State. You get the point?
Comrade, we're also hoping you can help us speak to some of the issues at the national level, especially now that a new leadership has been inaugurated for 2026. And
Yeah.
it's a very
Yes.
important year for Nigerians because it's the year before elections. I want to point you
Exactly.
to some of the engagements of the Nigerian Association of Nigerian Students in the 1970s, the 1980s, the 1990s, where they were actively involved, not just in engaging our leaders, but we saw them even going as far as protesting, going on the streets to air their grievances over certain policies of government. In fact, at the time, they have protested for the removal of an education minister back in the 1970s. when you juxtapose the level of engagement of NANS today and how they engaged with the authorities, back at the time, would you say that NANS has lost its boldness and its ability to actually call power to accountability?
Okay, thank you. You see, when you look at what is happening currently under the leadership of Akinteye Babatunde, you will find out that a whole lot is happening in favor of the students, calling out heads of institutions, calling out, heads of boards and parastatals who are not doing well. Okay, that is what it used to be. So there is hope. We are returning back to what we took over from, you understand? So that you find out that just recently, he called out a particular head of institution in the Southwest and all of that. You understand? He called out people, heads of institutions who were withholding the mail fund disbursement. That is the leadership we pray for. I am a stakeholder. I was a member of the Independent Central Planning Committee of the just concluded convention. And there are things we have to set aside to make sure that we achieve a successful convention. And so the person we have given power to is ready to work, looking at the things he have done so far. You understand? So there is hope.
All right, I hear you on all of that, but I'm also hoping you can speak to, how NANS is engaging with these issues. Now, over time, we've seen increase in several aspects of our human life, in petrol prices, for instance, in electricity tariffs. And even if students are not directly affected, the people who are their sponsors, who are sending them to school, are in one way or the other affected by some of these government institutions. And for some people, they believe that your organization, your association is one of those that should be able to put some level of pressure. Yes, for some of the things that you just referenced, we've seen those engagements by the NANS president, particularly with some institutions that are extorting students over the NEL fund issue. But do you think the level of engagement is enough to actually get government to respond to some of the issues that Nigerians are dealing with, that Nigerian students, indirectly?
Yes, you see, before time, even before now, NANS was seen and known to be a pressure group. And I have seen that nothing has really changed. NANS is still a pressure group. We are doing our best to make sure we engage the leaders at all levels. And you see, there's these three principles in NANS that we must not do away with. It has to do with C's. Then these three C's are: one, consultation. You must consult first. Consolidate before you give a long gap to confront. These are things we are doing on a daily basis to make sure that we don't confront just overnight. We consult, we consolidate before we now confront. So we are doing these things, because back in the days, people who used to handle positions in NANS, sometimes we just, people under the age of 20, 25, but today you see people who are already mature, people that are above 30 years. And so when you are above 30 years, you must begin to do things, with maturity, so that the people looking at you out there will now know that at least you are mature. So we are engaging them, systematically to make sure that instead of going on protests, most times we engage them, in a very mature manner that we drive home our points one after the other.
On the issue that you just raised about consultations, we have the elections coming up. In your consultations, what would you say is the priority for NANS, especially as they begin to, engage with students on who the ideal leader for Nigerians will be? Is that something that is a conversation within your ranks in the NANS?
Yes, you see, in NANS itself is a political party in the sense that nobody belongs to APC, nobody belongs to YPP, nobody belongs to NDC and whatever. And so you see people come up with, dissenting voices, speaking for and speaking against a particular thing that is not, going on well. We have many of our comrades who are speaking against the government of the day. And we don't go against it because we understand their reasons. Somebody from the Southeast may not really like the leadership of our President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and he has his reasons. So you must also see his reason with him. Somebody from the Southwest may be supporting our president with full chest. Okay, so you must also see reasons with him why he's supporting him and not supporting the other person.
So
And
is
so we try
NANS
to marry
divided?
all of this.
Are you saying NANS is divided?
No, NANS is not divided. You see, but politics cannot divide NANS. Are you getting it? So we allow people to air out their opinions in different angles and how they feel about it. But in the end, everybody will come together and we will take a decision either to support or not. But you know what it means to be in a group. When you decide who to support, the other person may not support the person alongside with you. So everybody have their individual interests. So that's the way it is.
This particular conversation is critical because if you're saying that we have people within NANS who are speaking with different voices, the Nigerian youth make up a significant portion of our voting population. And I mean, come 2027, we expect that there would be a reasonable level of engagement, particularly from the student unions. What is your message, or what message are you sending out to Nigerian students ahead of the 2027 elections? Do you think you've engaged to the level where the Nigerian students understand how important the elections are and how important it is for them to also be part of the process?
Okay, you see, in these aspects, I must say that for about 15 years of my engagement politically, I have realized that no matter how you try to entice somebody, when his or her mind is made up, no matter the billions, no matter whatever you may give to the person to convince the person, you cannot successfully convince that person. And so in a poll where you have more than 10 million people, honestly, it's not possible to say that you have convinced all of them to do your bit. You understand what I'm saying? Because honestly, I am being very honest with you here. Even within a family circle, there are some times where issues will come up, and if people are allowed to vote, you find out that if it goes to the public will realize that the family is divided. You understand? So you only talk to people, trying to convince them on what they should do according to what you believe, and you allow them to do that thing because these are all adults. Are you getting my point? These are all adults.
But if you cannot convince them on a particular idea, what is now the whole essence of unionism?
You see, even in other sister unions, we still have the same issue. Go to NLC, go to TUC. That is why they go to elections. And you see people win by majority votes. You understand? That is the same thing that happens everywhere. So we do not force people to swear on oath to do our bidding. We only engage people, in a systematic way to see how to convince them. The ones you can convince, you convince. The ones you cannot, you allow them to their consciences. That is how we operate.
All right. Mr. Michael, you're the former public relation officer at NANS Zone B. If you look at your time in office and all that you've seen behind closed doors and what you see now that you're kind of outside the box, right? What are some of the reforms that you like to see carried out in NANS? What would you suggest to say, we can do this because you understand it from the inside, you understand it from the outside, because before now, when NANS speak, there are some results that happen. When issues happen and students call on to NAS, we see some results, some decisions being taken. But now it feels like a toothless dog, so to say. But if you look at from your inside and outside dealings with NAS, what would be your recommendation for NANS to be better placed?
Well, every time I have the opportunity to meet with the younger comrades, what I like telling them is that basically student union government was formed for the purpose of relationship first. The second is experience. If money comes in, money is coming in at secondary, so your mind should be taken off completely from money. That was how we were raised. So but I believe there's hope. Because for me, my mentor once told me that everywhere you find yourself, that you owe yourself the duty to leave that place better than you met it. We did our best, in our time. And we try to also talk to the younger generations, to also pull our parts. Because I was one of the dissenting voices in Akwa Ibom State in my time, who was speaking against the wrong government policies and all of that. I know I was hated for it, but nobody wants to throw that same part, you know. But we are still trying to conscientize them, to talk to them, because sometimes governments don't really know what is happening most times in the rural areas.
I guess the
And so it is
unspoken
the
words you
people who
said
are
here is money. Money should not interfere in the business of student affairs.
money, basically, yeah. Money should not be allowed as the basic thing to control their minds. Otherwise, they will lose it.
All right. I
Well,
guess we'll leave it here.
I want to thank you so much, Comrade Michael Ibanga, for your time and your insights on the
Thank
program
you.
this morning.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It has been my great pleasure, being hosted by such a wonderful team like yours. I'm grateful.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
Yes, student unionism has long
Bye-bye.
been regarded as the nursery of leadership in Nigeria. We've had great minds come from students' union. And of course, whether it continues to produce principled leaders or mirrors the challenges, of the wider political system now, will depend on the choices today's student leaders make and the standards students themselves demand. So it's one thing for you to put up a leader in that position to be your voice. Another thing is to hold them accountable. As students across board, I don't think you should keep quiet. Hold your leaders accountable, because that's where it starts from. They move from there, they go into the house, and then they become maybe sometimes presidents, governors, and all. If you don't do it here, this is the foundation, this is the bedrock. If we don't lay the foundation better, if we don't hold them accountable, how do you hold them accountable in other offices, even bigger than the office of the NANS now?
I mean,